History is a vast and quiet library. Most of its books are filled with the familiar stories of kings, queens, and wars. But some of its volumes, tucked away on dusty, forgotten shelves, contain stories that have no place in our rational world. Stories of things that crawl from the darkness of folklore and into the chilling light of recorded fact. Our story takes us to the Kingdom of France in the year 1764. But we are not in the glittering halls of Versailles. We are here in the province of Gevaudan. This was a place of granite hills, deep forests, and biting winds, a land of profound faith and profound isolation. The people here were hardy, but they lived with a constant awareness of the dangers that lurked just beyond the firelight. They knew the stories their grandparents told them, stories of the loup-garou, the werewolf. To them, it wasn't a fairy tale, it was a warning. And in the summer of 1764, they would learn that their fears were not unfounded. They were about to enter a 3-year nightmare, a period of history where a very real monster would turn their home into a hunting ground. It began, as horror so often does, on a perfectly ordinary day. In the small village of Hubax, a 14-year-old girl named Jeanne Boulet was tending her family's flock. She was the first. The official record, dry and bureaucratic, states she was killed by a beast. The villagers who found her body knew it was no simple wolf. The savagery of the attack was unnatural. Her throat had been torn out. Locals assumed it was a tragic, isolated incident. But then it happened again and again. The attack spread from village to village, leaving a trail of pure terror. The victims were almost exclusively women and children, often caught alone in the fields or on the road. The creature, whatever it was, seemed to have a terrifying intelligence. It ignored plump livestock, the easy meals, to specifically hunt humans. And the descriptions from the few who survived an encounter were chillingly consistent. This was no wolf. Witnesses described it as being the size of a calf or a small horse. Its fur was a strange, reddish-gray, with a dark stripe down its spine. Its head was massive, like a boar's, with a snout that opened into a jaw filled with razor-sharp teeth. Its tail was long and powerful, said to be tipped with a tuft of fur, like a lion's. And its roar, they said it was a sound that could freeze the blood in your veins. The beast was not just a predator, it was a killer. It seemed to take a cruel pleasure in its attacks. It would decapitate its victims, leaving their bodies for their loved ones to find. Panic began to grip Gevaudan. A suffocating quiet fell over the villages. Doors were bolted long before dusk. The flicker of a single candle, the only sign of life. Every snap of a twig in the woods, every howl of the wind, was the sound of the beast coming for them. The local hunts failed miserably. It was too fast, too smart. Some even claimed that musket balls simply bounced off its hide. To the terrified and deeply religious people of Gevaudan, the conclusion was obvious. This was not a creature of flesh and blood. It was a demon, a divine punishment, or worse, a werewolf. By early 1765, the story of the beast was no longer a local horror. It had become a national embarrassment. Newspapers in Paris wrote sensational stories about the monster terrorizing the countryside. The king, Louis XV, could not ignore it any longer. The honor of France, and indeed his own authority, was being challenged by a single, bloodthirsty creature. He placed a massive bounty on its head, enough money to make a poor farmer a king in his own right. Then he sent the army. First came Captain Duhamel and his dragoons. They organized massive hunts, with hundreds of peasants sweeping the forests. They found nothing. The beast seemed to mock them, often attacking a village just miles from where the soldiers were camped. Duhamel was recalled in disgrace. Next, the king sent for the Denneval family, a father and son who were Normandy's most celebrated wolf slayers. They were arrogant, professional hunters who boasted they would kill the beast in days. They spent months in Gevaudan, killing over 1,000 wolves, but not the wolf. The attacks continued, and the Dennevals left in failure, blaming the locals for being uncooperative. The king was growing desperate. Finally, he turned to his own legend in the making, a man named François Antoine, the king's personal gun-bearer. Antoine was no mere courtier, he was a renowned hunter and a decorated war hero. He arrived in Gevaudan with his son, armed with the finest weapons and a royal decree to end this nightmare, no matter the cost. Antoine was methodical. He dismissed the supernatural tales and treated the beast as a strategic enemy. He spent 3 grueling months tracking it, interviewing witnesses, and setting up ambushes. The entire nation held its breath. On September 20th, 1765, near the Abbey of Chazes, Antoine and his men finally cornered a creature. He took aim with his royal musket and fired. A colossal wolf, larger than any he had ever seen, fell dead. It measured nearly 6 feet long and weighed 130 pounds. This had to be it. The body was paraded through the villages, then preserved and sent to the royal court at Versailles. François Antoine was hailed as a national hero. The king declared the Beast of Gévaudan slain. A wave of relief washed over the province. The nightmare, it seemed, was finally over. But the monster of Gévaudan wasn't a character in a story that ends when the hero wins. For 2 months, there was peace. The people began to rebuild their lives. And then, on a cold December day, it happened again. 2 children were viciously attacked. The beast was back. Or perhaps the real beast had never been caught. The psychological blow was devastating. Their hero, the king's champion, had failed them. The king, having already declared victory, now washed his hands of the affair. Gevaudan was left to face its demon alone. The second wave of attacks was even more brutal, more daring. The beast seemed to have lost all fear of man. For another 18 months, the slaughter continued. It was during this desperate time that a new, unlikely figure entered our story. Not a soldier or a nobleman, but a quiet, deeply religious local farmer and innkeeper named Jean Chastel. Chastel was an enigmatic figure. Some saw him as a pious man, while others whispered that he and his sons were strange, reclusive, and knew more about the beast than they let on. But he was also a known hunter. As the official response faded, it fell to local men like Chastel to defend their homes. On June 19, 1767, Chastel joined one last desperate hunt. The legend that surrounds this day is as powerful as the history. It's said that Chastel, believing the beast was supernatural, took no chances. He had a local priest bless 3 silver bullets for his musket. The hunting party fanned out across a slope called the Saône d'Auvers. Chastel found a spot, sat down, and began to read from his Bible. As he prayed, the Beast of Gévaudan emerged from the trees. The stories say it stopped and stared directly at him, as if drawn to him. It made no move to attack. Calmly, Chastel finished his prayer, closed his book, raised his musket, and fired. The silver bullet found its mark. The beast fell, and this time it did not get up. When they cut this second creature open, its stomach contained the remains of a young girl who had been killed the day before. This was the true killer. From that day forward, The attacks in Gevaudan stopped. Forever. The beast was dead. But the question that haunted France for 3 years remains with us today. What was it? Was it simply a wolf? Perhaps an unusually large, intelligent wolf, or a pack of them, driven to hunt humans due to a scarcity of their natural prey? It's the simplest explanation, but it doesn't quite fit the bizarre descriptions from dozens of eyewitnesses. Was it an exotic animal? Some modern cryptozoologists believe it may have been a striped hyena, an animal that can grow to immense size and has a powerful jaw. An escaped menagerie animal, perhaps, unleashed on a populace that had never seen such a creature. Was it a human killer? This is perhaps the most chilling theory. Some historians point the finger at the Chastel family, suggesting they may have been sadists who trained a large animal, like a mastiff wearing an armored hide, to attack people. Was Jean Chastel's final shot an act of heroism, or the act of tying up a loose end? Or was it something else? To the people who lived through that hell, the answer was clear. It was a monster sent from the depths of their darkest folklore, a werewolf, a shapeshifter, an unholy terror that could only be killed by a blessed silver bullet.